John Dryden said, first we make our habits, then our habits make us. So if you want to be mentally healthy, spiritually healthy in a world that's filled with endless stress, distractions, and anxiety, you need to have some effective habits in place that give you life and move you more into a place of communion with God. To that end, I just want to talk about 4 strategies that I use today that have been powerful in changing my life, changing my psychology and my relationship with God. So I'm a clinical psychologist. I've counseled countless believers and non-believers, and I've seen that really one's functioning in any area, whether that be physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual, comes down to the habits that they employ on a daily basis. Let's start jumping into it right away, okay? First and foremost, the main practice that I do, the most important one that cannot be neglected, is spending time enjoying God's presence and meditating upon His word every single day. In John 15:4, Christ says, "Abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me." So connection, constant connection with God is what He craves. That's why He sent His Son to rejoin us into the Holy Family. So if I'm living a life apart from God, if I just have head knowledge about God while neglecting the secret place where intimacy is formed, then I'm going to be dry. I'm going to be like a dry sponge that has no saturation in it at all. In Matthew 6:33, Christ says, "But seek ye first the kingdom of God." Not third, not fourth, not when I get around to it later after I finish all my work. Seek Him first and His righteousness, and everything else that I need will be added unto me. One of the main shifts that I've had to make in my life as a believer is transitioning from being carnally minded to spiritually minded, which, let's be real, is insanely difficult because I look out here and I see the natural realm. I see trees, I see cars, I see people. I can't necessarily discern what's happening in the spiritual realm unless I constantly train myself to open up to it, allow myself to be a little child, and enjoy a satisfying relationship with Him that He's already provided at the cross. If I'm making the secret place a priority in my life, God gives me supernatural joy, supernatural peace. I can begin to access everything that's already been provided at the cross. Everything else in life becomes way more simplistic. If I neglect the secret place, if I neglect my relationship with Him, then my mind likes to offer up a million different problems that all have a million different solutions. Life becomes very complex. I start to feel exhausted. I lose hope for the future. And it all comes back to returning to Him. An important thing to note here, He's not a method. He's not a strategy. This isn't going to look the same every single day. There's sometimes I enter into a quiet room and begin to worship Him and I start weeping. There's sometimes nothing happens at all. I'm not chasing a sensation. I'm chasing Him. That's an important thing to note here because a common trap is letting your feelings become God. And if I don't feel God, well, then He doesn't love me. Nope, His love has already been proven by sending His Son. Okay, so that's number 1. Let's move on to the second one here. Taking daily inventory. I've been taking daily inventory for close to 10 years now. Now, what I mean by inventory is I take some time in the beginning of the day, sometimes at the end of the day too, to examine the contents of my heart. And there's a few key things that I'm looking out for here. Am I resentful? Am I selfish, or have I been selfish that day? Am I in fear, and am I being dishonest? Similarly, what sin have I let into my life? Am I engaged in any forms of idolatry? What I have found is that these factors like resentment and fear, if I let them into my heart, they totally choke out my awareness of God. It's like putting a little bit of poison into a drink. So I need to make sure that on a daily basis, I'm staying clear of these things. In 1 John 4:20, it says, "If anyone says, 'I love God,' and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother, whom he has seen, cannot love God, whom he has not seen." Similarly, it says in 1 John that if you hate your brother, the love of God is not in you. That in itself is all the reason that I need to make sure my heart is in its proper place. In trusting, abiding faith in Him that's formed in a loving relationship with Him, and making sure that I'm treating and serving His children as He would have me. I want the love of God to be a deep and abiding experience in my life, and so what that means is if I hate or I'm angry, resentful at God's children, I am wrong. The same is true for dishonesty. The same is true for fear. There is no fear in the kingdom of heaven, nor is there resentment, nor are there lies. So these things, I have to take responsibility of making sure that these, as soon as they come in, I release them out. There's various ways that I do this, different types of inventory, resentment inventory, fear inventory, which all involve a process of self-humility, which I can talk about in later videos if anyone's interested in it. Number 3, identifying when I'm in self-will and consciously surrendering my will. So you might be asking, what is self-will? I haven't heard that before. Self-will is the state of being where you're focused on pursuing your desires and making life better for yourself. It's self-centeredness. It's an orientation towards life. And the orientation sounds something like, I am here for me. I want to get the green lights. I want to make more money. I want this relationship. I want that. I want that. It's all about me. You're serving this false god of self. Now that's completely at odds with the Christian life. Christ says, if anyone wants to follow me, let him first deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. So self-denial is the entrance ticket to the kingdom of heaven. We must die so that his life can be poured out in us. So your reaction to hearing that might be, well, that's where I live 100% of the time. Of course, that's where the majority of people live. It's the baseline state of self-centeredness that results from the fall of man. So I'm going to share with you why it doesn't work. If I make my core aim in life myself, then naturally I set up expectations for how reality should unfold. Inevitably, reality does not unfold as I think it should. The result, I feel defeated, depressed, hurt, angry, bitter, indignant. What's the basic problem here? My orientation was incorrect. Instead of serving God and his children, loving him, I've made my own opinions, judgments, expectations God. That's why it doesn't work, okay? Getting my way and allowing for God's way are mutually exclusive. So many Christians offer up in prayer to God, here's what I would like to happen and can you help me with it? No. We don't get to tell God how things are going to unfold for us. The best possible plan for my life is God's plan for my life. In order to allow that, I need to get out of the way. I need to consciously surrender my will and allow his working in my life. Think about Jesus in the garden prior to his crucifixion. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. It's super scary giving up control. Okay, but this is how this step ties back into 1 and 2. The more you have an abiding relationship of experiencing God's love in your life, which doesn't just mean you're getting the goosebumps and you're feeling all tingly at church. It's a deep internal contentment, joy, and peace that only he can offer. The more that's a regular experience for you, the more you become formed into Christ's image and enter into his love, the more naturally you're going to be able to surrender your will. It doesn't have to be such a conscious, effortful process because you know on a deep level he's good. So that's why everything flows out of daily communion with God for the sole purpose of knowing him, not getting things from him, knowing him more deeply. I do have a longer video on surrender that I will post in the description if anyone's interested in kind of seeing how I break it down a little bit more. So feel free to click that if you'd like. Number 4, prioritizing sleep. Good sleep is a superpower. Unfortunately, many people don't know what needs to happen in order for you to get good sleep. So I want to talk about this from a neurological perspective. The first thing that needs to happen is brain activity has to start to slow down. The reticular activating system that keeps you alert quiets down, and the thalamus begins to start filtering out external information and stimuli. At the same time, your hormones shift, and these are super important here. Melatonin rises to signal sleep. Cortisol, the stress hormone, decreases to reduce stress, allow you to fall asleep more easily. And adenosine, which is a neurotransmitter that can be thought of the sleep pressure molecule that accumulates throughout the day, builds up and causes you to feel more sleepy. So if you want to think about how to improve your sleep, think in terms of these 3 different hormones. Well, how do you make sure that your melatonin production is functioning properly. You need to get exposure to bright light as soon as you wake up in the morning because that starts the clock. You need to avoid bright light, specifically blue light, at night, which prevents melatonin from being released. Regarding cortisol, it's really important to not engage in any stressful activities or even watch stressful media before you go to sleep, and to have some type of wind down method to de-stress. And similarly, adenosine is really impacted by the use of caffeine. If you're a slow metabolizer of caffeine, like I am, you need to make sure that you're having your caffeine way earlier in the day. If I have more than 1.5 cups in the morning, my sleep is disrupted even like 12, 14 hours later. Okay, so keep those 3 in mind. Now, your parasympathetic nervous system, your relaxed nervous system, starts to take over more and more as you fall into sleep. Your heart rate decreases, your muscles relax, and your body temperature drops. Okay, so let's think about those 3 different things. If you run a marathon and then jump into bed right afterwards, you're not going to sleep because your heart rate is way too elevated. Similarly, if you're just moving around a lot at night, like cleaning very quickly or, just moving stuff around in the house at a rapid pace, that's also going to affect your heart rate. So you want to make sure that you're still and quiet and that your heart rate has the ability to fall just a little bit before you go to sleep. You want to make sure your muscles are relaxed. Personally, I like to use a topical magnesium oil to help my muscles relax. Also, just deep breathing, any type of relaxation exercise is really going to be helpful before you go to sleep. And last, your body temperature has to decrease in order for you to fall asleep. Now, this just happens naturally. What I find augments this process is using cold exposure at night. I have a cold plunge that I use that if I time it correctly, it brings my body temperature down long enough that when I get in bed, I fall asleep like that. So those are some of the strategies that I use. Other strategies that I use, I got to make sure that my room is cold, dark, quiet. All right, so I keep it set at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. I have a whole bunch of blackout curtains that I put up to make sure no light from outside gets inside. And I make sure that the ambient light within the room is dealt with. For example, if there's, little small LEDs on the outlets in my room, I cover those up with a little bit of tape or paper, whatever it might be. Additionally, I didn't think this was going to work as well as it does. Using a weighted blanket has drastically improved my sleep quality. I find that the weighted blanket really reduces the restlessness at night, the moving around, the jostling around. Another added benefit is I don't really have to make my bed to such an extent when I wake up because I haven't moved much. So that's great. Making sure that you're limiting caffeine goes without saying, but avoiding alcohol, avoiding drugs, all of these things are going to make sure that you get restful sleep that allow you to function better the next day. So making sure all of those things in place really help me stay connected to God and maintain a general sense of well-being. Now, there's a few more that I may record in a future video if people are interested, but I'm going to link that other video about surrendering at the end of this video. Be sure that you watch that if you want to learn more, and feel free to comment if there's any other type of content in the future that you'd like to see. I love answering questions that people have through these videos. All right, thanks so much for watching and take care.